Let's talk about Juniper Blessing. Every bit of data and information that I have researched and shared is from a reputable source, period. Okay, let's get started. Juniper Blessing, a 19-year-old Santa Fe native. She graduated from New Mexico School of Arts, where she was known for having an angelic voice. She's a really good singer. She was. At the time of her passing, she was majoring in atmospheric science at the University of Washington. I have no idea what that is, other than it has something to do with weather, and it sounds hard. So good for her. Juniper was a great singer, had an affinity for Pokemon, and even felt inspired by Professor Juniper. As the first introduced female professor, she obviously felt very motivated because Pokemon introduced an important educated female character, and that is where her wonderful name came from. Folks, very quickly, this is something I'm adding into the clip after the original recording. It is really important that I mention Juniper was, as reports suggested, a trans woman. I don't know if she was trans non-binary, but most people refer to her as her. So I'm just going to put it out there. She was trans, she was gender diverse, and that is a big motivator as to why we need to address her death with strong conviction, because if we don't, there's a chance another victim will emerge soon. Before her, another trans woman's death, the murder was recorded, I think, only a week ago. So, yeah. She loved the weather. Her beautiful dog, I forgot what breed it was, I'm sorry, and was known as someone who held a deep sense of empathy for others. She was a caring person. In an article by Oxygen.com, I'd like to share a statement with you, released by her family. I believe it was done through the Human Rights Commission, I could be wrong. Juniper was simply the most amazing human being we have ever known. Highly intelligent, extremely talented, and deeply sensitive to the needs of others. Her loss is devastating. On May 10th, Juniper was stabbed to death 40 times, what would often be called a crime of passion, by a man who is 31 years old named Christopher Lee. I read somewhere that law enforcement wasn't looking to label this a hate crime. I'd like to quickly point out that in the US especially, hate crimes seem to have a habit of being mislabeled, even when evidence provides a pretty strong inclination to allege and identify that a culprit's actions were motivated by hate. In other words, prejudice. In Juniper's case, transphobia. So, while officials may disagree for whatever problematic excuse, America has a strong history of pretending people don't kill because you're different. The transgender community has a pretty strong history of dying because someone undervalues your life for being trans. Let's continue. Trans Europe and Central Asia, known online as TGEU, they have a website, recorded statistics of 281 trans and gender diverse people murdered between October 124 and 30th of September last year, so 2025. Since 2009, there is a recorded 5,322 murders worldwide. It is widely believed these stats would be significantly higher if law enforcement and media entities reported accurately the identities of all trans and gender diverse victims. This year, so far, there has been 86 reported deaths of trans and gender diverse people, 11 in the US, not including Juniper. Reports from trusted sources verify 78% of victims are people of colour, with at least 56% of trans or gender diverse murder victims being black trans women. This is a 2024 statistic from the Human Rights Commission, Human Rights Campaign, HRC. Sorry, I'm having a moment. The HRC. From a study by the NIH, the National Institute of Health, it's an American government site, conducted between 2013 and 2021. Most trans victims are killed at the hands of someone we know, and nearly 40% of trans victims are not given the dignity of being correctly reported on by media bodies. Of the cases where the culprit is found, so it said something like 50% of cases only had a suspect, an arrest, which is, yeah, it's wild. It's wild to have a 50% suspect rate. That's just, yeah, a rate of arrests, or, yeah, that's just, wow, that stunned me. Sorry. 75%, 3/4 of perpetrators are cis black men. Now, I'm not going to fixate on black men and the African American male cultural issues towards women, especially queer women, but the statistic should speak on its own. There is a distinct stemming within a particular demographic. The killers are cis men, just to be clear. The issue is men. But to add a bit of context, it's important we acknowledge the surprise. Since most Republicans are known as white supremacists, you just expect that this ratio would be predominantly white cis men. It's not. And I just felt that was important to share. There's a bigger picture here we need to observe. The United States Counterterrorism Strategy of 2026 released 4 days before Juniper's death. I'm not saying that it's a direct link to what happened to her. I'm saying there is a lot of irony. Okay, there's a lot of tragic, awful, in my opinion, unforgivable irony. The document was released on May 6th. Juniper passed away on May 10th. On page 5 of the Counterterrorism Strategy 2026, currently we face 3 major types of terror groups: narco-terrorists and transnational gangs. Of course, the biggest scapegoat of all, legacy Islamist terrorists, and the very, very fun introduction since the Trump administration's re-entry, violent left-wing extremists, including anarchists and anti-fascists. I repeat, anti-fascists, not pro-fascists, not fascists, not people who want to control, dominate, and destroy their peers, organizations or groups that could be responsible for directing intense hatred, ultimately motivating tragedies like what happened to Juniper and many other trans people, many other people of color, to women, to any vulnerable members of society. They are not an issue for the US government. It would be an issue if you're anti that. That is what anti-fascism means, to clarify. There is zero reference to white supremacy or alt far-right extremist groups in general, which make up a large majority of the US's worst demographics in terms of violence and hate speech. Zero reference. Please also note the Trump administration did not address Juniper's murder or express any condolences publicly. I will add, even should they have done so privately, when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, they made a huge fuss about it. When other members of various backgrounds are violently killed, they have also reported on that or made some sort of commentary, even if it's negative. They have completely bypassed Juniper's death, even though her murder was extremely gruesome and is making headlines. I'm pretty sure even Fox News has reported on her death. Page 7 of their 2026 counterterrorism document. CT activists will also prioritize the rapid identification and, I quote, neutralization of violent secular political groups whose ideology is anti-American, radically pro-transgender, and anarchists. To be clear, in the US, the term neutralize, when referenced to a perceived threat, more often, if not always, means to kill, especially when they're referencing terrorism or a hostile target. So neutralize typically means to kill. American intelligence wishes to identify left and trans-friendly or trans-ally groups who oppose the Trump government. They want to brand them threats and then literally erase them. That is what I have interpreted from the statement. They are looking to brand anyone who opposes their administration as a threat and by proxy have the right to then kill them. If not, they will most likely imprison them. When they say radical pro-transgender, the Trump administration's perception of any group that is pro-trans being intensely and extremely negative, it is an indicator and a logical one to say they will consider any support for trans communities to be radical. And I'm certain the violence will at some point ensue. Some statistics about the Trump and Republican administration since their re-entry into power. This is reported up until the 26th of April by the BBC. I suppose it might be because there was the ceasefire in Iran, but there are some other statistics to consider as well. 2,000 civilians, not soldiers, 413 of which were children, killed in Iran since America waged war. Now, you may not want to call it war. Everyone else in the world is calling it a war. 2,000 civilians killed, 413 children. Civilians. We're not talking gangsters, we're not talking terrorists, just civilians. America and their attacks caused the deaths of 192 civilians killed on boats in the Caribbean. Now, America loves pretending like everyone they kill is a terrorist, but there's actually no evidence to support most claims. In 2025, 32 people died in ICE custody, 17 in 2026 so far. Renee Good, Alex Preddy, they talk for themselves. It is also important to note that there has been a steady decline of crime in the United States, which the Trump administration very recently claimed ownership for. Now, they're going to utilize their ICE raids as the reason for the decline. I will link all of the resources I claimed my information from at the end of the video, just to again clarify. Reports show there was a steady decline in crime since the Biden administration. What caused the surge to begin with was the restrictions and difficulties that emerged with the COVID-19 pandemic. So this was around 2020. Crime surge, but we're not just talking violent crime. We're talking carjackings and anything that falls under the banner of a criminal act. So when we say there's no decline, I read somewhere that the statistic of homicides declining was about 17% in total since the surge in COVID, which is still fantastic, don't get me wrong. But it's not to say that all violent crime has gone down. by whatever it is they're claiming, like 40, 50%. It just means that crime in general, which again, fantastic, but we need to acknowledge the fact they're very much fixating on, wow, we've made America so much safer. No, there's no clear evidence to say anything the Trump administration themselves individually did was a contributor to the decline, just because it has been very gradual since the Biden administration. And there were references on the BBC to say they spoke to a lot of professionals. I forgot what their background was, but they're professionals related to crime, statistics and analysis. And they said that it was because during the COVID pandemic, America paused and ceased much of its social programs, as well as, just really, it's a lot of social and community programs which would have promoted more positive behaviors. After the COVID-19 pandemic, they continued the programs, but they also invested a lot of funding into tackling crime, okay? And that gradually promoted the decline of crime, and that's why America is facing such a lower rate of crime. The idea here, again, is not to say that Trump's administration has nothing to do with crime declining, but to get you all to stay true to the side of facts. The decline has been occurring since 2021 onwards. There were a lot of deaths in America before the shutdowns took place, because I don't know if you remember this, but during Trump's presidency, he actually wasn't shutting America down, and a lot of people were dying for a large period of the time. Moving on. America, I simply state to you, without prejudice, it's up to you whether you'd like to believe me. By proxy, your country's biggest threat right now is the Trump administration. And what I mean is, while Juniper was not killed by someone we don't know yet, but it's not like they were wearing a Make America Great Again hat, it does not mean that the Trump administration is not connected to the hate crimes occurring, even though hate crimes were always occurring towards queer people, especially trans or gender diverse individuals. There's no mutual boundary that says any crimes occurring during his administration is not somehow influenced by them, just because it's been a repetitive factor in history for many decades. That being said, there's also currently no direct evidence to say that the Trump administration is what led to this individual developing whatever reasons that they did for killing Miss Blessing. But I want to point out that you're living in a nation where your government is turning many allies into anxious parties. There is a growing rate of distrust intensifying in countries around the world directed towards the US. The constant threatening language and stereotyping of the Trump administration is reverberating into the communities that he directs them towards all around the world. The world was definitely more cooperative with each other historically. The world was much more aligned with one another before the rise of nationalism around the globe. Trump is just one big cog, but still one cog in a bigger picture, a bigger problem in the world. And I want to say that Juniper Blessing was a 19-year-old child. My younger sibling is turning 19 this year. I may have come off emotionless during my video. I am neurodivergent. Unfortunately, the way I communicate if a camera weren't staring directly into my face is very different to what I put across when I'm on the spot. But I want to state that I spent the entire day working on this video, researching. I gave my entire day up because I do not wish to be silent anymore. And even though my content is very amateur, and I'm sorry if I have not done justice to this poor woman who suffered such a tragic death, but I did this for her. I wanted to support many other victims within my community who died very violent deaths, and Juniper is one of, unfortunately, many. She was my breaking point, and I said, enough is enough. I'm going to do it, and we're just going to go along with it and see what happens. So here we are. I want you to know, Juniper, even though you've passed on, you were a motivational factor for me to finally get my head out of my butt and speak up. I think It's very powerful to say you were a presence in life and you're definitely a presence outside of as well. I hope I never forget you. I try not to forget anyone that I've read about, but yeah, I did have my cry. I had an emotional meltdown earlier in the day, and I am very affected by her loss. I want to say to her family, I send you my deepest and genuine condolences. May you have peace during your grieving and continue to find solace in your positive memories of such a happy individual that you raised, and may justice come swiftly. Rest in power, Juniper. Hi everyone, I just wanted to add this quick clip to let you know that I am aware my voice sounded monotone and sometimes emotionless throughout the video, and it is not a reflection of how deeply impacted I am by the loss of Juniper and the devastative effects that it's had on her community, her family, and to us in the trans community. Please know that I did mention this slightly, but to give you a longer explanation, while researching what happened to this poor girl, which I came across an article about her passing a couple of days ago, and that just built from there. It very much caused me to have a mental breakdown, and my body just reacted accordingly. I felt quite depressed. I cried intensely and mourned, and the way that you can for someone who would have gone through a lot of what you have experienced in life. So I did this for her. I'm sending you all of my love, Juniper's family, and to Juniper herself. Like, I wish I could speak to her directly and just let her know you are amazing, and I'm so glad that we had you as part of our demographic. So rest in peace, rest in power, and leave the rest to us.